And welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary in Westborough. For those of you who haven't watched this show, my name is Art Bergeron. I'm an elder law attorney. I work at Myrick O'Connell. These shows, though, are not about law. They're about what you would need to know and who you would need to know if you're my friends Frank and Mary and you want to live in your house until you die and be buried in the backyard and your house is here in Westborough. So I've been doing this show now for a while with my friend Shelby Marshall.
Hi, Arthur. Good to see
And
you.
one of the reasons is because I don't know anybody. Shelby knows everybody, and she gets to get these great guests to come on the show. So Shelby will introduce for us who we have on today, a special friend to all of our seniors, right? Who also happens to be a local.
Right.
A local.
Absolutely. So it is my pleasure, and obviously Arthur's as well, to welcome Alice Bonner. And she is the Secretary of the Executive Office of Elder Affairs here in the state of Massachusetts and a Westborough resident. So welcome.
Right. Hello, Westborough. I'm delighted to be here with you all today, and thanks for having me.
And was a member of the Dementia Friendly effort
I
here.
was just going to add that.
And continues to be here in Westborough. Yeah?
Absolutely. So not only doing all the great things at the state level, but participating here and contributing your expertise. So it's great to have you today as our guest.
Thank you.
Great. So let's start off with some basics for our audience and tell us a little bit about yourself and what is the Executive Office of Elder Affairs?
Sure. Well, in terms of myself, I'm a Westborough resident, as you said, and my husband Matt and I have raised our sons here and come back, and we still live here, and the boys come back quite often, so still have a lot of ties to the community, which is wonderful. I've been a nurse and a nurse practitioner, and I spent most of my career in healthcare, and then have had this opportunity for the last 3.5 years to really learn more about home and community-based services across the Commonwealth. So that's been tremendous to learn about people like you, Shelby, who have a home care agency, et cetera. So Elder Affairs has as its mission to promote the independence and empowerment and well-being of older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers. And that's really important because November, we're still in November for a few more days, is actually National Caregiver Month.
Right.
And so we've been celebrating caregivers all month long, and there are 844,000 in Massachusetts alone.
So help us to define sort of
Out of about 6 million people. That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
That's
it
a
sure
lot.
is.
Yeah.
So there are what I'd call kind of professional caregivers, but I think the 840,000 you're referring to are not professional necessarily, right?
They could be family caregivers.
Right.
We often ask people, because one of the things about caregiving is people don't always identify as being a caregiver.
Right.
So we say to someone, do you ever, take your dad to the pharmacy to help pick up his medications? Or do you take your mom, to the doctor and help her remember what the doctor or the nurse practitioner said? And usually people say, well, yeah, I do that.
Of course I do that, right.
But we say, well, then you are a caregiver. And people give so many hours to helping clean someone's house or shoveling snow and these small tasks, but they really add up. And these are often people who also have a full-time job, raising kids, have other people in the family that they're, caring for. So it's a very important role in our communities. And one of the things that we don't do often enough is we just don't say thank you to caregivers. So all month long, we've been recognizing caregivers, and Governor Baker actually had a proclamation for Massachusetts specifically, saying, proclaiming November as Caregiver Month. But Governor Baker, because of his family and his experiences, has really been a tremendous advocate for caregiving and for more and expanded programs to support family caregivers, whether it's a program in the workplace, so an employer says, yes, it's okay for you to go and take your mom to the doctor for a few hours, and puts policies in place that promotes those types of activities from being possible, and
Which
people
are huge.
people not
It's
feeling
just a
bad
matter of an
about
hour
that.
here, an hour there. It isn't like you don't need to be a full-time caregiver in many cases to be the caregiver.
Right.
That's right.
But it's almost like preventative medicine. I look at it, right? If I can go and be with mom at the doctor's appointment and just make sure that, although she's independent and can speak to kind of what her needs are, that I'm a second set of ears, because those are often quick appointments, and you might forget, oh, well, no, or there's a medication change, like, oh, well, last time we were at this dose, and now you're saying you want to change it to this. Sometimes the best of doctors sort of forget what happened at the last appointment,
Right.
or what happened in between with the other specialist mom is seeing.
Exactly.
And so it's to be able to ask, well, wait, they just changed your insulin. Is that going to have an effect? Oh, well, wait a second. So it's so important that I think where employers can support families, and in the long run, it's sort of a win-win, because now mom theoretically isn't going to be hospitalized, right?
That's right.
And so you're not experiencing a longer out of
Right.
office time.
And caregiver stress and strain and burden are real things. And if through our workplaces, if we can do a better job supporting family caregivers, then their health is better and their productivity is better at the workplace.
Absolutely.
We hear a lot of stories where people say, I had to quit my job, or I had to cut back my hours.
We've both seen those.
Yeah.
We've
And,
both seen those.
you don't want to lose a great employee to those situations. So Elder Affairs, as part of EOHHS, which is Health and Human Services, we started a program with the person who leads the Family Caregiver Support Program, the federal program, in our offices, where we run support groups every month.
Okay.
And so Amanda Bernardo, who leads this federal program, every month we're either in one of our offices, or someplace across the state, where we bring state employees who are actually family caregivers together and provide, services and
wonderful.
support.
Yeah.
So trying to walk the walk at the
Sure,
state.
right.
And, Secretary Mary Lou Sutters is a social worker and a very strong proponent of us doing what we're asking communities to do as well.
And I suppose once the state employees are all feeling that, and they're feeling empowered themselves, it's a lot easier for them to spread that message also.
Absolutely.
So they're saying every employer and every employee, if you've got that relationship, everybody's breathing better. So
Right.
that's great.
Right.
And we've had great response from the business community. I mean, we've
Great.
spoken to the Massachusetts Business Roundtable about this. We've spoken to the Mass Municipal Association in terms of cities and towns, but the business community, specifically the chambers, have really, this resonates with them, because every employer
Right.
can remember that one person who they lost and wishes they had done more. So.
Right,
Right.
absolutely. Great.
And conversely, every employee who didn't have a problem and was allowed to go home, it really bonds you to that employer,
That's
right?
right.
Because now you really feel tight with them.
Absolutely.
So now I have to ask, because I know this.
thought I was
this-
asking all the questions.
Well, no. Every once in a while, you get an outlander. I get an outlander question.
Okay, all right.
You've been such a champion of this whole dementia-friendly communities effort, and I just mentioned this because, as you know, Shelby was really the leader here and continues to be a real leader here in terms of figuring what that is and figuring out what the best programs are around dementia-friendly communities here in Westborough. You've been doing it statewide and really have driven this agenda toward making us a dementia-friendly Massachusetts, which is incredible. But as we were talking a little bit beforehand, could you talk about one of the nice parts about that program is that you're supporting locals. You're supporting local communities trying to figure it out. So you must be seeing some of that now, right? Can you talk about some of the things that you're seeing that are kind of special on the ground, that are making communities be friendly for someone? My friends Frank and Mary, I always define a dementia-friendly community as the place where I can live until I die, even if I'm a little confused, and no one's going to make fun of me, and I'm going to be safe. So
Good
what
definition. I
is
like
so
that.
what is what are the places that are kind of that you're seeing things that are like, whoa, that's really
Right.
interesting.
Well, interestingly, Westborough has been called out actually by Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito as one of the places that is one of the best practices. And part of that is Westborough started, and you guys know this, with an assessment. So we developed kind of a little survey to go out to businesses and families and faith-based organizations in the schools and ask people, what did you know about dementia, and what do you think it is, and do you know anyone with dementia, and all these questions. And the data that came back, it's a data-driven process.
Sure.
The data that came back let the team in Westborough and the Westborough champions have a really good idea about what to do next. And again, we see all of this work, we call it cross-sector work, meaning we're not just working in healthcare, we're not just working in home care, where you and I work a lot,
Sure.
but we go to the restaurant community. So we have groups like Purple Tables, which is out of Marlborough, where restaurants can sign up and set aside a time during the day that's a little quieter, simplify their menus, and train their servers to understand what dementia looks like, so they take a little extra time. I love this Purple Tables
Yeah, I do
idea
too.
because I go out to lunch with my mother every weekend, and my mother's 89 and she has dementia. And we go to certain restaurants in Northampton where she lives, where the servers know us and they know her and they're kind and inclusive and
And
they,
even though they may not have had specific training, there's a familiarity
Exactly.
with your mom and kind of how she is, and so
Right.
they understand that. And
And they know to
that's the
keep the
next-
menu simple and
Right,
Right.
yeah.
right. And that is the next phase. We're not quite there in Westborough. We have that as part of, that came out of our charrette and the surveys, and so we have sort of a 7-point plan in Westborough, and the various projects within that plan are at different tracks, or different places on the track, excuse me. And the exciting part, I think, will be when we get that business engagement through kind of things that people can touch and feel, like what they eat, and because then it becomes really real. So
Right.
so it's one thing to, I think, train town hall employees, that's fantastic, and that part is underway. But when people can go recognize, and restaurants can participate in saying, I'm part of Westborough being dementia friendly, I think it just gives it a kind of a holistic, common ground feel.
Yes,
Right.
and it's business by business.
It's
So-
not like it's happening to someone else, it's like, oh, that business is participating
really-
in something.
but you know, I think
Yep.
when we did the surveys, that's a really good point, because what we found was, at least I did, because I went out and did
Yep.
some of these, is, you know, everybody has a story. And that's not true of a lot of other conditions or diseases out there, but Alzheimer's is so prevalent. You know, 1 out of 8 people over age 65. It's so prevalent that almost every business owner, every legislator will have a story. And I think that's why it catches on so well.
Sure.
Is people know that person in their family, and they want a good quality of life
Right,
for that
right.
person too. But you know, the other things in Westborough and other communities are all around the state that we do see is the libraries have been
Yes.
incredible
Libraries.
champions.
Yep.
And, you know, libraries are reinventing themselves in so many different ways, but the librarians, you know, again, getting trained, running memory cafes, having speakers come in from the local hospital and talk, just great stuff.
In Northborough, they've been real champions of this. They've got they're developing a special section in the library for folks who are coming in as caregivers to be able to learn more about dementia.
That's
They have a
great.
program that sends books home, so you
Yep.
can order books home.
Yep.
So and those folks can almost be kind of like the eyes and ears in terms of what's going on kind of at home
Right.
and
Right.
stuff. And then they're running a memory cafe out of the library.
Right.
Uh,
So we
terrific,
hear these,
terrific.
you know, fantastic things all over the state. The other thing you and I were talking about a little bit was the schools. So
Yeah.
Westborough, the superintendent here, Superintendent Bach, has really gotten the Honor Society and a lot of the other students involved at the high school and I think even the middle school level. And we were talking about the technical high schools like Assabet, where the students who are learning auto mechanics can help older people who don't know much about cars so that they don't get, you know, ripped off, and so
Right.
that they can understand what's wrong with their car and how much it ought to cost to fix it. And or they're just fixing cars for older folks.
Right,
So
right.
we've heard about those models. And I would say right next door in Grafton, one of the things that's really cool is that their senior center is located right on the campus of their old high school.
Oh, that's right.
And right
Oh,
near their
okay,
new high
okay,
school,
yep.
so it's all on that big campus. So that means that the students can walk over and, you know, listen to an oral history from someone who actually fought in World War II or
Sure.
the Vietnam War. And the folks using the senior center can walk over and walk around the track.
Sure.
So it's just, you know,
Sure.
these ideas that are springing up, a lot of them are around intergenerational programs and we were talking about not separating people by age.
Right.
What's up with that? I don't know why we
You
ever
are
did
over
that.
there,
Right. This
you are here,
othering,
right,
you know,
right,
this
right.
othering. You're someone else. You don't. I don't relate to you. We are all aging. This is about us. It's about you and
Yep.
me and Arthur and
It's
everyone.
especially about me, but it's kind of
No,
about.
it's about
it's a
your
kind of-
kids
yeah,
or your
yeah, right.
grandkids.
Yo, you're right.
It's
You're
about
right. You're right.
everyone.
Now
So-
I want the secretary to mention that she also brought another guest
Yes, I know.
who's going to be coming on in a matter of moments.
Well, we actually have a live studio audience.
Who
This
was?
is-
Oh,
this
and
is-
she was supposed to be. Wasn't she supposed to be applauding? She's.
I
I can
hear-
hear.
I hear the
I can hear the
applause.
audience. They're waiting for that guest. So could you just tell us about your guest and
Absolutely.
what she's going to be talking to us about in a few seconds?
Absolutely. So our Chief Housing Officer, Emily Cooper, is with us today, and Emily has been leading incredible work for the last 3 years on housing and homelessness, preventing elder homelessness, and helping lots of different communities all over the state figure out as a city or a town, what's available in housing, how can we create low cost or relatively lower middle income folks can afford the type of housing, and how do we combine housing and services so that, to your point, you can grow older wherever you are, and we can bring the services in. So Emily connects services providers, home care providers, and housing. So you're going to hear a lot of
Well, I can't
great
wait to talk with her
things from
because
her.
That's very
actually
exciting.
last night, at our selectmen's meeting, we were talking about kind of the strategic plan of Westborough. And one of the key elements of that plan is a master plan. So we've done one in the past, and now we're coming up to do one again. So the planning board will champion that. And critical in that, and also part of our strategic plan as a top priority, is affordable housing. And affordable housing sort of, again, as we don't sort of do the others, I know Emily's focus is on kind of seniors, but it really is about really affordable housing sort of for everyone. And sometimes it's hard to imagine, I think, given the quality of life we have here in Westborough, that there are some folks that are struggling to survive and pay their rent and pay their mortgage or just find transitional housing as they age. So I can't wait to hear from her, and I don't know, we might bring her back as a
We might even
part
bring-
8 guest or something.
Well,
I
maybe
don't know.
maybe we can get the secretary to sit over there and she can applaud.
That would be
Yes, I
fantastic.
will
And we
get busy
All right.
with my
So,
applauding.
as usual, you can bring on these great people.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much.
Thank you. And thanks
We'll
for
be back
supporting our
after
caregivers.
Okay,
what in
bye,
normal
Westboro.
times is the commercial, but won't be, and we'll be back with our other guest.
Great.
Thank you. We're back after the non-commercials, and here we are. Welcome back. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You've already been introduced, but can you just
Yes.
kind of tell us a little bit about
Sure.
who you are, what you're doing, how you ended up working with Alice Bonner? Always a
Oh
lot of
gosh.
fun.
Okay. Well, I don't know if
And,
we have enough time
well,
for
you've
that.
got 30 seconds for that, and then you're going to tell us everything about senior housing.
Okay.
How's
I'll
that?
in 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Great.
No, 13
problem.
actually.
13. Okay. So I'm Emily Cooper, and I work in housing, and that's a weird thing to say because I say to people, well, when you were 3 years old and you said, oh, I want to be a vet or I want to be an astronaut, nobody says I want to be a houser.
A houser.
Except for Bob the Builder,
Right.
right? You kind of fall into it. And I actually came via social services and counseling, and turns out I wasn't very good at that, but I was
That's a
counseling
weird
people.
path into housing, though.
Yes,
from
I was
social
counseling
services.
people in a homeless shelter. So suddenly I had to learn about housing. And if you talk to many housers of this sort, they kind of fall into it, that suddenly they realize, oh gosh, this is important, right? Like if you don't have a place to live, you're not going to be able to address many of the other things in your life.
Sure.
And so suddenly you have to figure it out, and
It's like
you,
food
it's
and
a,
shelter.
Right, it's a little bit of a maze, but I wound up really liking it and realizing early on that this was something kind of I wanted to do. And I was introduced to Alice, who we are both Cornellians, so we
Yeah.
sang fight songs and things like that.
Now, can you actually sing that song?
Not on the air,
No, you
not on
cannot
the air.
That wasn't part of our contract.
No.
Maybe a little bit later.
All right.
So about 2.5 years ago, she had me join Elder Affairs, which has been great. It's a funny title. I'm a chief housing officer of an agency that does not fund housing,
Right.
Okay.
right? So
I was surprised when I heard that you did this.
yes,
in
and so
Elder
I've had
Affairs,
somebody
right.
ask me, why do you have a job?
Right, right.
And I think it's important because I think it shows that Elder Affairs recognizes how important housing is. And much of what I do is a little bit of matchmaking. It is, putting people on blind dates and seeing if they work. There is housing out there. There is services out there. Can we get them to work together for the person who lives in that apartment who wants to stay in that apartment? Or there's housing being created, and let's think about it a little bit differently. How do we make it supportive housing or affordable housing, or bring in services in a different way from the beginning? Really, our goal is to help somebody stay wherever they want to stay.
Sure.
Whether they're a homeowner or a renter. So I guess that's kind of how I wound up in Elder Affairs.
And so how does that practically work? So you have, let's sort of take it from the resident perspective. So today I own a home, I'm aging in it.
Right.
Whether or not I can really keep it up the way I used to, but I really want to stay there. So
Right.
how does your organization, agency work to help residents.
I mean, and I really want to stay in my house,
Right.
but I definitely want to stay in my community.
Exactly.
Even if I
Sure.
can't physically
Right,
be in
which
my
gets
house.
into the
Right,
transitional
so if you can,
Sure.
all
So
of
I
that,
think the
yeah.
first thing is that we, Elder Affairs works through a network of agencies. So we have 26 aging service access points. So around here, agencies, which around here is BayPath.
BayPath, yep.
And so the first thing I would say is, have you spoken to an options counselor at BayPath? And BayPath, we train these counselors to know, to be the sort of the first line in to say, okay, well, you want to talk about housing. I know about housing, or I know about whatever, caregiving resources,
Sure.
and I can help direct you in the right way. It's sort of amped up information and referral.
You know, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know the ASAPs that they knew that.
Well,
Well,
great.
and I'll
Okay, I'm done.
Well,
And I'll actually add, I actually had personal experience with a family member through that exact referral process. So I'm obviously very familiar with
Good.
BayPath, but this is for a family member, and we called an options counselor, and it's very different being kind of on the professional side of
I'm
caregiving
sure.
and then the family piece. But I want to say, and certainly to our audience, it's been a very, very positive process. Our counselor has been very helpful. Actually came out and met with us face to face. We sort of offered a number of different options. We said, kind of given how I learned, can we do a face to face meeting? Absolutely. Came out and met with the family.
Great.
We armed her with some basic information about our family member, and then she came with, and it was primarily about housing. It was also about care management and
Right.
sort of what supportive services could this individual have. And, came out and sort of said, here's kind of what this person might
That's
qualify
exactly
for.
what we want them to do.
Actually helped us call Mass Health because we realized that this person was maybe not properly classified, as it happens to be.
That's great.
Wasn't, and that changed in status, and it was literally just the wrong box got checked when his age changed.
That's sometimes all it is.
Made all the difference in the world. So
That's great to hear, and I'm glad you
yeah.
said that with
So,
the
and that wasn't-
secretary
this
in the
wasn't
live
planned.
studio
Here.
audience.
No,
Yes.
this
No,
was
that's
not
perfect.
planned. I mean, this
That's
literally
right.
just
Not only
happened
did you make
within
your
the-
own job, you're getting a raise.
Look at that.
That's terrific. That's great.
But that's
So
an example of
that is
how-
exactly
how-
what we want them to do, because your situation may be different than your situation, right?
Sure.
So you may have somebody who's wants to stay in their own house, and really what they need are services to come into the house. And we have a
Right.
variety of options depending on what your income is and what you really need.
What you need.
What you need. We have the Summit Elder Care, which is a PACE program where they're going to come in and they're going to wrap services all around you. We have a home care program, or a program that will help you more with your activities of daily living. And then there are things like, you know what? I need changes made to my environment. So there's the home modification loan program that they would refer you to, which is a state-run program. I looked up before I came, you have a property tax deferral program here
We
in
do.
Westborough.
We do.
Which is great, and it's got 0% interest,
Yes.
which is also great. And I think the income level's at $40,000, but you don't have a lot of people on it.
Right.
So at the state level,
Yep.
we're actually, one of the
Very
things we're
rare,
working
very
on
rare
is
to use
across
that
the 351 towns, is how to get people more aware of that. And I think it will really help those people who don't have enough money right now to fix their roof, because
Right.
their main asset, they're on a fixed income, but they're living in their asset.
Yep.
So we're really, one of the things that we're working on is how to help shape that program and help towns better utilize that program.
And cause some of those seniors to not be as afraid of it.
Exactly,
Because they're
that's
so
part of it.
afraid. They're
It's
like,
so much
oh,
of it's
but
an
there's gonna be a
education
lien on my
campaign.
house. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a reverse
Right,
mortgage, though.
exactly.
Right.
So
it shows up when you
it's-
die.
It's
you
somewhat
know?
of an
Yeah.
education
Yeah,
campaign.
so it's
yeah.
really important. And
Yeah.
you can do that.
Yep.
Yep.
Because then they don't feel like they're being sold this thing by
Right.
somebody.
Right.
That's
Right.
great. That's
And
great.
I would add too, actually I've talked with our town assessor about that, and that department right in town hall to the left as you walk in, they are more than willing to talk with folks. It's
Right.
not an intimidating process. They'll sit
Right.
down and kind of explain what has to, what kind of paperwork is needed. And they've told me by and large, even people that come in, it is truly such a prideful thing. I think sometimes it's not only about
Yes.
education, but it's like, oh my God, I've paid my taxes for all
Right.
these years and now I can't. So I think a lot of it is getting kind of past that and recognizing why you're doing it, and that,
Right.
sort of it can be a win-win. And just for our audience, our assessors are more than, or assessor and team are more than happy to sit down and talk with you
And
about
we've
that.
seen some communities like Newton that have really taken this as a challenge and
Okay.
gone out and done a whole bunch and
Oh, really?
yeah, and
Tried to really tried to
they've
grow.
grown their program
Take a look at
like
them.
Yes.
by
Just to help them.
leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
So, and so much of it is just sort of education awareness. I think there's also the renter, the person who's living in housing that, their rent may go up, or they're in affordable housing, maybe it's not the best quality, whatever it may be, or there's not enough of it. And often they're not aware of what's going on around them. And some of it is we're trying to get more people kind of in the building who are trusted. So, for example, in Marlborough, I think you're from Marlborough, right? Okay. In Marlborough,
I know it's a long ways away
long
from
ways
Westborough.
away.
Yes.
We occasionally cross the moat.
cross
every
the
once in a
line,
while.
yes.
Yeah, we come over.
Elder Affairs pays Bay Path again to be what's called a resident service coordinator in 4 buildings that are owned by, operated by the Marlborough Housing
And
Authority.
all of our housing authorities.
So
right.
they're there and they're on site when your letter comes and you can't quite understand what it means, or you checked the wrong box on the Mass Health, or they're there to say, think something's not right with Mary or Frank, and I haven't seen them around recently, and that's a really important role, and we're trying to look at ways to get that into more housing that's out there. Studies have shown that that presence of that person. It's
Like
almost
an
like your
advocate.
doorman. Your concierge,
Yeah.
the person
The mail is piling up.
yeah,
right?
and
Something's going
they'll
on.
notice.
Yep.
And they play a very important role in keeping seniors safe and healthy.
Great. So as we sort of think about Westborough, one of the things that we just talked with Secretary Bonner about is that Westborough will be undertaking this master plan. So so it sort of looks at how do we want to utilize our land? It looks at traffic, looks at all different kinds of things, but that and affordable housing have been identified as top priorities in this town. So talk to us about sort of maybe what other communities are doing, or how to, some ideas about what things to look for, and maybe kind of plant some seeds so I can take them away and
Of course.
follow up.
Well, so the word affordable has so many different connotations depending on who you're
Sure,
talking
of course.
to, right? But what
And actually, I'm going to actually ask you maybe not to focus on the affordable by class, like it's the gap people. To me, because there are so many people that qualify for services, particularly if you're on Mass Health, and you're sort of in that income bracket, and then it's everyone else sort of after that can't afford to be in maybe assisted living and like put $500,000 down sort of as an investment.
We have a chart in our office and they kind of fall in this red box. Sometimes we call them the red box people. We are actually trying to look at ways, what they call moderate income, which is, you've got $60,000, $80,000, you're above, you should be able to afford to pay things on your own, except you live in Massachusetts and housing costs are really high.
Sure.
So we are trying to look at innovative ways to develop loan products and other products that would help incentivize that. I think the question when you say affordable, and for all the conversations, is who are you talking about?
Yep.
We have done some nice things in other communities where they have paired services and housing from the beginning, from the shovel.
Okay.
So in West Springfield, for example, we have a property that's right now being built that is all for people who are on the PACE program there.
Okay.
So the services, so the housing is housing, and then people who are on the PACE program, which there is called Mercy Life, come and live there. And because there are so many people there who are PACEs for people who are nursing facility, they'd otherwise be in a nursing facility. Then there's services.
So I'm
community.
just going to mention,
Yeah.
I had as my guest in Northborough, the other one, not farther away, the PACE person.
Yep.
Because PACE, for which it comes out this far, it's Worcester
Fallon.
County,
Summit
Summit Elder
PACE.
Care.
Yep.
We might want to have that person as one of
Great
our
idea.
guests.
Yep, so-
And basically lean on them about doing something to have one of their places right here. This would be a great idea.
So
That's
what
a
they
great
need
idea.
is, they don't build housing and they
Right.
don't fund housing. So the
Right.
services people don't have the money to pay the rent. And the rent people don't have the money to pay for the services.
Absolutely.
So that gets back to why I kind of try and make these marriages. So, and I find that they work well from the beginning.
Yep.
If you start from as opposed to trying to retrofit.
Yeah, and at the state level, the funders have started to realize this. So the funding state agencies that do housing are now requiring, if you're coming to them to say, I want to do senior housing, they say, what's your service plan? Who are your service
Wow.
partners? What are you
That's
going to do?
great.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
So if you go that way, at some point,
Interesting.
you're gonna. So it
Have to-
forces them to start
Great.
saying, "Oh, I want to talk to the PACE person. Or I want to
Yeah.
talk to Bay Path. I'm going to talk to my council on aging and say, do you want an office here? Whatever it may
Wow.
be." to start thinking that way.
That's
So
fantastic.
she's so interesting.
Oh, my goodness.
That we just ran out of time.
I know.
Sorry.
But I want
No,
her.
no.
But if she's listening, I want her boss to know
Yeah.
she's really good. What a great thing to
Yes.
have.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you very much.
This is really fascinating.
Yeah,
This
I
is
mean,
just
we
really
could keep
fascinating.
talking.
Yes, but in terms of because where you are in
Yeah.
terms of your master plan, this is also ideal in
Yeah.
terms of the input
We'll talk.
to keep
Okay, you
Westborough
got
on the
it.
cutting
You know
edge.
how to
on
find
the
me.
This is
cutting
great.
edge.
This is great.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my
Emily.
friend Shelby
Yeah,
Marshall.
this is great.
Thank you for that person in the distance, the Secretary of Elder Affairs.
for having us.
And we will look forward to seeing you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Westborough. Thank you.
Bye.